The Night Agent is finally back on our screens with Season 2 after almost a 2-year wait. Following Peter Sutherland as he was working as a night agent out in Thailand, we saw the leaking of intel cause him to be compromised, and a mirrored extraction like what we saw in the first episode of Season 1 be the very thing that opened up this new installment. From intel leaks to presidential elections and to chemical warfare being on the cards, this season pretty much covered it all whilst setting up a third season as well. So with that, let's dive into this season and break down all that there was to take away from it. Here is The Night Agent Season 2 Ending Explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. The Ending Explained. When it came to the ending of this season, there were a lot of different plots that needed wrapping up. The main thing that needed wrapping up was centered around the intel leaks that were happening and the prevention of the chemical attack from taking place inside of New York City. We saw the Bala dictatorship, name and family throughout this season a lot, which was led by Viktor Bala, who was being held in The Hague for his war crimes in carrying out an attack on his own people. He had a vendetta against the Americans because they gave him the information on a program called Foxglove, a covert military program that was being carried out to create deadly chemical weapons so that they could use them to create antidotes if they were ever used against them. However, the US denied all responsibility of selling the information to him, and they disconnected themselves completely. So with Viktor Bala behind bars, his family wanted to create a war with the West and punish them for their lies and putting him behind bars. They planned on getting revenge by creating one of the 9 chemical weapons, and they wanted to make KX, the one which didn't have an antidote created for it. At least, that's what Markus, the nephew, wanted to do. Tomas actually just wanted to get a hold of these files and release them so that the people would know exactly what happened and the Americans' involvement in it. This was what showed the divide in the family and what caused them to all eventually die, because they wanted different things and they turned on each other due to their different moral compasses. Even though Bala wasn't believed, it did actually turn out that presidential candidate Knox, who was going up against Hagen when he was the head of the CIA, greenlit the Foxglove program, and also allowed the information to be sold. Hence why we ended up seeing him withdrawing from the presidential election right at the end of the final episode. I did wonder why there was such a heavy focus on the election during this season, and the ending and the setup for Season 3 was exactly the reason why. This is also why Jacob Monroe wanted the file from the UN that was in the archive, because that was what had the proof that Knox was behind the selling of the files, and the leaking of it would have meant that Hagen would pretty much win the presidency. When it came to preventing the chemical weapons from being used in the city, Peter and Rose were able to stop it in time from happening. However, because Peter followed in his father's footsteps and ended up going against his job and his country by releasing Solomon, Jacob Monroe's middleman, it meant that he was going to be facing jail time. At least, that's what we thought. With Peter Sutherland being somebody that Monroe could trust, and with Monroe being alongside the future president, it meant that every piece of information that the president would have going over his desk would hold a value and had the chance of getting into the wrong hands if Monroe deemed it worthy of selling. Like he explained earlier on in the show, everything holds a value to somebody. It's all just subjective. So all information that the president would be looking at would be valuable to somebody else and could essentially be sold or traded. With that becoming a potential threat, Catherine decided to release Peter and allow him to work as a double agent, working for Monroe when he called and asked for a favor, something that would most likely be on the horizon considering his best man, Solomon, ended up being killed. And whilst working for him, he'd be reporting it back to Catherine so they could arrest anybody involved in the trading, selling, and holding of the intel, as it would ultimately put the nation at risk. With regards to the story that was going on with the Iranian embassy that was running alongside the main plot, we saw that Noor was reunited with her mother following her going against her country and working with the Americans so that she could start a new life in New York. This was due to a deal that she made with Peter and Michelle. They both believed that the documents that Abbas received from Solomon was about Foxglove, but it wasn't. It was instead about the Iranian dissidents that had moved to France that they were planning on killing one by one for going against their country. This document included Abbas's daughter, who we heard moved to France several years ago when she fell in love. This was what ultimately allowed Noor to get away, because once she was caught in his office, he allowed her to take the documents and go to the UN. This way, the people in France would be informed and could be taken into protection. Javad and Noor's time together was something that was actually used against Javad in the end. This was because he was almost getting too big for his boots and trying to have Abbas taken down. Something that he never should have threatened him with, because Abbas threw back at him that he was working alongside Noor and going against the country. So he ended up being taken away and most likely sent back to Iran, where he'd go to prison. Noor was coming to terms with her life in the United States, and we saw that the cost of what it took for her mother to be there was weighing heavy on her mind. She was working a job that she didn't really want to do. Her mother wasn't leaving the house and was barely eating, and she was essentially alone. So her life changed drastically. She didn't regret the decision, but it showed that the idealistic life that she was hoping for was something that still required a lot of work. It wasn't really a happy ending for her. Then, with Rose, we saw that she went back to California and got the promotion at Adverse that she was promised. Peter told her to not go looking for him in the future because, like in Spider-Man with Mary Jane, his enemies would always go after her as a way of getting to him. So I wonder if that now means that she's been written out of the show and we'll maybe see a different female lead. With the fact that we saw Chelsea in the final moments working as security for the president, maybe she'll have another role in the next season. I kinda hope she does because she was a great character in the first season. My review of season 2. I thought this season of the show continued on in a way where the quality was just as good as what we had in the first installment. I thought the story was gripping, engaging, a bit more complex than the first season with the different layers and arcs, but I enjoyed that, because in the end, they all ultimately connected in some way. Do you know what? There were even some moments that had jump scares in it, and it made me jump. A good sign of tension and suspense being at its finest. In terms of which arc I liked the most, it definitely got more interesting towards the end, where we saw the Balas causing trouble and Peter and Rose preventing the chemical agent from entering the air. Plus, everything that was going on in the Iranian embassy was very interesting too. Noor did get a bit frustrating at times to watch due to the decisions that she was making and the way that she was acting, but I guess she was in a very difficult situation. When it came to Rose, she was a character that I did like, but I thought some of the writing of her character felt a bit off and inconsistent. There were points where Peter was quite literally telling her to not be near him and to stay away from the danger due to the consequences that being a night agent would bring. And then, when things got tough, such as lying to Noor about her brother being killed, she'd say to Peter, "You signed up to be a night agent, I didn't." But then, I'd just be thinking about how she had ample opportunity to walk away, so things like that did bother me a little bit, and it was always with her. This actually felt like a proper classic Netflix show. 10 episodes of almost an hour. It's like being back in 2016 or something. I feel like nowadays we get 6 to 8 episodes at around 45 minutes for a TV series. So it was actually quite refreshing to be in a world for a much longer period than what we're used to, with no mid-season finale. So I respected Netflix for actually giving that to us. It didn't drag and it wasn't boring. It was exactly how a show should be. Long enough to get immersed and for the world and characters to feel fleshed out whilst allowing enough time to build towards an ending. I definitely think that a season 3 is also on the horizon. With the success of the first season of the show, I imagine that will likely carry over to this one, and then that will have a ripple effect into season 3 being greenlit. The stakes genuinely feel like they're at the highest they've been with Season 3. Intel being shared directly from the president's desk. I can't see it being much bigger than that. This show's definitely worth a watch. It's probably the best agent show that Netflix makes. I did quite like Treason and The Recruit was good, but this one tops both of them for sure. So if this sort of show is your thing, I'd say don't wait and get on it while it's hot. So, there you have it. The Night Agent Season 2 ending explained. If you want to see more of your favourite TV series and movies being broken down, then click on the card in the top corner, or alternatively you can head over to my channel where you'll find them all. What did you think of Season 2? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. As always, thanks for tuning into the video and I'll see you in the next one.